Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Virtual Happy Hour. I'm Raina from Garden District Bookshop, and tonight I have with me Helena Dea Bala. I love her name. It flows beautifully, and I love it. She is an ex-lawyer, ex-lobbyist, and currently runs Craigslist Confessional, which is a website we'll talk more about later, and had a book come out just last month. Yeah, because it's still August. Okay, last month, came out in July by the same name, Craigslist Confessional. And I am really looking forward to talking to her and listening to her. So I'm going to bring her on here and we'll say hi.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Raina. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for coming. This is great. I'm really excited to talk to you. And you're tuning in tonight, or you're coming, I don't even know the right terminology for all these live virtual events yet. From where? Where are you?
I'm currently in New York City.
Yay. This has been so much fun talking to authors all over the country, where we normally have to, there all this drama to get everybody in one location, and we can now just beam in from everywhere. Not only us, me and you, and of course I'm in New Orleans, but everybody viewing, they can be all over the world.
It's kind of like one of the bonuses, unexpected bonuses of what's happening right now with COVID is that unfortunately you can't be there in person, which is sad, but it's also great because, like you said, we get to do this and, we can be from our living rooms, which is nice and cozy, and hopefully everybody else is tuning in and feeling the same.
You can relax a little bit more,
yeah.
I think, which is nice. It's nice.
And have a drink.
Absolutely. And tell me, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking Shock Top Belgian white beer.
And you were saying that's just what was on sale at the market?
Just what was on sale.
That's
okay. The cheapest option.
When I get together with a couple of my girlfriends, everybody's supposed to bring a bottle of wine or something. I'm like, yeah, okay, I got that. And then I go in and I just pick one based on the label 90% of the time.
Yes, totally. For the wine, I'll shell out a little bit more and just get like a mid-level, like a nicer, because you can truly tell the difference. But with beer, like, this is a very good white beer, and it's quite inexpensive, but you could pay for a legitimate like Ommegang, which is a little bit ritzier, a level up, and it's actually quite expensive. And there isn't a huge difference, at least not to my palate, in the taste. So for beer, I'm like, whatever. Whatever is cheapest, I'll go with.
Completely agree on that.
Is that lowbrow? Is that okay to say? I don't know.
Wait, I don't know if it's lowbrow or not, but it's absolutely okay to say. How about that?
Somebody is like, what is wrong with her drinking Shock Top?
Whatever. This is not a beer tasting, everyone. If you were here for some sort of advice about what beer to pick, you've come to—
I am not, yeah, exactly.
And this is vodka and orange juice. It's a screwdriver, which is what I had laying around. So again—
what is your vodka of choice?
So my vodka of choice is 7— oh, shoot. I can't remember the name of it. I could see I don't have 7. It's a local brewery. Hold on.
Okay.
7-5 Distillery. I'm gonna look it up because I keep forgetting. 7-3. It's 7-3 Distillery. There it is, 7-3 Distillery, and they're local. And I tested around. Like, I love to take factory tours and distillery tours and stuff. I just find that really interesting. So I went in there one time and did their tour and tried their vodka, and I was like, okay, this is worth it. This is, like you were saying, you paying the extra, maybe like $6 or something, for the bottle. This is absolutely worth it.
I will have to try that. I haven't tried it. I might have heard of it, but I'll have to see the label to see if it rings a bell. But my vodka of choice, and I'm quite particular about it because I've tried a whole different bunch, and my husband's Russian, so he's kind of a vodka connoisseur. I really like Tito's vodka. I think it's just such a smooth drink. I love it. So have you tried it?
I have, and that's a good one too, because you can get it pretty much everywhere.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It was when I first tried it, I was in DC. So it must have been it was over 10 years ago now. And it was still quite niche. It wasn't very well heard of. It wasn't popular at the time, but since it's just become kind of like everybody drinks Tito's vodka. So it's great. Yeah, I'm happy for their success because it's definitely deserved.
There's like a billboard, or there was a billboard here for it at some point. So once you've reached billboard status,
yeah, you've made it. You've made it.
You've made
it. Tito's has made it. If anybody from Tito's is watching, I'm very happy for you. I was one of your first customers, the original Tito's hipster. Well done.
You were there before it was cool.
Yes. Yes.
I was trying to explain that something like a few years ago, like the neighborhood I used to live in. I was like, yeah, but I lived here before everyone got here.
Yeah.
He just looked at me and he goes, that's exactly what a hipster would say.
Yeah.
You're so right, but I do feel like I was,
but it's true,
right.
Which is also exactly what a hipster say. But it's true, right? You're not making your case any better here.
No, I'm not helping. So, that's good.
Oh, man.
So everybody who is watching, if you have any questions or comments or want to tell us what you're reading or what your favorite vodka is, if you have a favorite beer or a favorite vodka, you can type it in the comments because we can see all that. And we will answer any questions you have or comment on your vodka preferences. We'll go from there. So you were a high level corporate. I was reading this because you're a lawyer and a lobbyist. I'm like, that is so much work to get there. And then now, what do you say you do now?
I say I am an anonymous listener, and then I have to go into inevitably somebody asks, well, what does that mean? And so I have to go into my spiel about what Craigslist Confessional is. But usually I also throw reformed lawyer in there just to kind of, let everybody know that I've tried to make amends about my prior profession and I'm one of the good guys, whatever that means. But yeah, I'm happy to not be practicing anymore. I actually graduated from law school and I became a lobbyist almost immediately after graduation. So I never really actually practiced law, which I kind of knew I never wanted to do anyway. So I don't feel that I've missed out. But even lobbying was not my cup of tea. And about a year and change into that, I decided to quit that job, which was a huge decision and still is really in retrospect, and do Craigslist Confessional. And we can happily get into how that all happened. And
I think you were the third ex-lawyer, reformed lawyer that we've had on Virtual Happy Hour alone.
Yeah.
Which I think is really interesting now that I'm thinking about that, because you don't think of becoming a lawyer or going to law school as something you're going to get out of at some point.
Right.
Like that feels like a career choice, like a life choice from the beginning. But you're the third author that we've had on here that has, got some. Sky Jackson, I don't think practiced either, or she did for a very short period of time.
Yeah. But
Maurice Ruffin, he was a practicing lawyer, and now they're all authors, and you're an author, and that's really interesting.
I think that a lot of, I'll speak for myself. I went to law school and wanted to become a lawyer because I'm a first-generation immigrant. I came to this country when I was 12 years old. So my parents had very high expectations of their daughter. I'm also an only child. They wanted me to go the straight and narrow, get a respectable job, and have a good career, and fend for myself, and make them proud, and kind of also to a certain extent, justify their huge. I think they would consider them sacrifices, and they absolutely are, that they made in order for all of us to be here, but especially for me to be here. And I think that they kind of insisted on me going to one of those professions that's like, safe. So medicine, lawyering, engineering, something, in that field. And so I went to law school, and I was very ill prepared for the experience. And I knew almost immediately that it wasn't what I wanted to do. The reason I had gone is that I wanted to be in human rights advocacy and civil rights advocacy. And I found out that I could have done that without a legal degree, and that really what I was studying law school was, torts and contracts are very different from my actual passions. And it wasn't until 2L and 3L that I got to take classes that I actually cared about and wanted to know more about. So I was stuck. I had kind of made my bed and paid for it in student loans, and I figured, okay, I'll just finish the 3 years because I'm already here. And I was so young. I was 21 years old when I went to law school. I was still very much a kid in many ways. And so I did. And then I was, when I graduated, I got my job, and I was 24 at that point. I was just had so much ahead of me, and I knew so little about the world. And I felt so unhappy with the decisions that I'd made, and I kind of look back at myself back then and feel, sad for the circumstances that led me there, and for not having had the chance to just kind of pause and think about, is this the right road for me? Is this what I want to do?
Yeah.
And so, I ended up deciding it wasn't, and I'm glad I did, but it was definitely not easy to do, because once you've already, made that first step, you've started, everybody else around you seems to be loving the law school experience, and you're just kind of like, oh, hi, don't really want to be here. But anyhow, it was a costly mistake, and live and learn.
Well, yeah, live and learn, and you got here because of it, though. Because if you hadn't been in this position where you felt, unhappy and maybe smothered in that all those decisions, it snowballs. You make one decision, another decision, all of a sudden you're in the middle of law school, then you're, whatever it is, and that happens in life all the time. You might not have sat down and had that sandwich.
Yeah, no, I definitely wouldn't have. I think that's exactly, you're absolutely right, is that I was talking to a friend of mine, and she knows the trajectory and everything that led to this, but she was telling me about how she'd gotten to school. She lived in Florida, and she'd gotten to some college in Florida, and she would have had to pay. We were talking about how different it is to pay for college now and student loans now than they were for our parents' generation. She said her mom paid $30 per class or something like that to go to college. And she's like, I could have gone to school in my home state, and I would have paid, maybe I would have paid out of pocket. She said basically would have been able to afford to pay out of pocket even at that point to go to college. But instead she decided to go to Howard University, which is in DC, which is where she and I met. And at Howard, she had to pay so much more because it was out of state and private, etc. And so she said, but I wouldn't have met my husband, whom she met there, and I wouldn't have had my son, and I wouldn't, be where I am now. So we'll call tuition, we'll call it even for all of the wonderful things that I have now in my life. So the way I look at it is absolutely, I maybe am not using that law degree, which a lot of people don't. So I'm okay with that either way. But also I probably wouldn't have taken the road that I did. Definitely wouldn't have met my husband, definitely wouldn't have had my son. So it's definitely, it's paid for itself and more. It's definitely, I'm happy that I'm here. And I'm so sorry, I keep fidgeting with these because we were just talking about this before I went online. They're just so squirrely and they keep falling out. Should I just take them off? Is that okay?
No, it's up to you. I think you sounded fine either way when we were testing it out. Hope, where is the home of Tito's Vodka? I don't know. Do you know where the home of Tito's Vodka is? Oh, I can't hear you. I think it's still connected to your iPod. That's okay. So Hope, comment and tell me exactly where is the home of Tito's Vodka?
I want to say, I hope Hope won't kill me if I get this wrong. I want to say it's Texas.
I don't know.
You can hear me okay now, right?
Yeah, we can hear you now. I think it was just still connected there.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, Hope's in Austin, so you might be right. Austin, there we go.
I know.
Question for you, Hope. Can you tour the Tito's Vodka factory? Maybe not right now, not in COVID. We're not going to go on COVID rules. But pre-COVID and hopefully after COVID, is that one that you can go through the distillery or the bottling plant or something? Because if it is, I'm going to add that to my list of things to do when I go to Austin. Because, as I said before, I love something about that, just that process. It's learning. It's learning is what it is. I enjoy like how it gets from potatoes or whatever to my glass.
I actually did that once in, I want to say it was in Brooklyn, but I think it was a whiskey distillery. I think that's, yeah. And it was, I mean, just very, very interesting, but also was so astonished by how very seriously everybody took the process and the science behind it. It was just so much more went into it than you would have thought from an outsider's perspective. So I agree with you. I think it's like a very cool experience, very cool learning experience about how it goes from, finished product to.
Yeah. If you ever are in Lynchburg, Tennessee, do the tour of the Jack Daniel's distillery.
Oh, okay.
Because it's really old, and they have these long, like cave-like warehouses where they have all the barrels and you can go through them, and that's really interesting. But also it's in a dry county, so you can't do any of the tastings or anything. And yeah, they can't even sell you any. The only ones they can sell you are the collectors, like $100 bottles that are like never really supposed to be opened because they're collectors, not so you can buy those. But otherwise you can't do any of that. And it was really interesting. Kids can go on that one though. Note to moms, any moms in the audience. You want to go on a distillery tour and you've got little kids, usually they can't go, but you can go to Lynchburg.
You know what I love? Here's another thing I love about New Orleans, the drive-through daiquiri spots. What a concept. I have been to several. It's one of my favorite experiences there. And I also love, like, I don't know what it's like in most places around America. It's not like this. Most places that I've been to. So like, I would say West Coast, DC, here in New York City, definitely not like this, where you go into a supermarket and there's like a designated liquor, beer, alcohol section. There is one, but it's maybe like a tiny little percentage of the whole store. So I have been to Dorianax.
Is this? Yeah.
So, okay.
Grocery store.
My mind is blown by the sheer variety of alcohol. I'm just going through it. It's like, wait a second. This is like not even liquor stores, not even designated liquor stores in New York City have this amount of variety. It is just mind blowing. I went and I wanted to do like a beer tasting because we were hosting a poker night. And so we went and there were, I think we counted like 15 or more different varieties of just, as I said, I'm a big fan of wit beer, 15 varieties of just that from like Vienna, from one place that makes it. I was like, what? This is amazing. I'm like was really impressed. Oh, no.
Well, see, that's really interesting. It's such a small, and I wouldn't have guessed that either. I would guess that they had a bigger operation since they had made it, they made it, they got a billboard. So, I would think that they were larger, but that's very interesting. So no, you can't.
Shucks.
Now, I will say something else about the grocery stores, the alcohol options in grocery stores. When I was here, I've been in New Orleans about 15 years, and maybe a year or two in, a couple years in, I went into the regular grocery store, and you know how sometimes they'll do tastings? There's little cheeses, there's crackers, there's things like that. There was a man with tequila samples, and I was like, I just try it. He's like, you want to try it?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm sorry, sir. What? And he's like, he's got those little bitty thimble ones,
Yeah.
But by the time I left that table, I had at least over a shot of tequila because we had 4 different kinds. And he's like, you want to try it? I'm like, I guess so. I don't know what I'll be leaving the grocery store with because it was at the beginning. It was like the alcohol, and then I was going to go into the groceries. And I have no idea what I bought on that grocery trip, but it was a good one.
Yes. I mean, I feel like they do it right. Priorities. You go in, tequila first, then you shop for your food, and then you drive home. Hopefully not. Hopefully
No.
not.
Well, that's the thing. That maybe that is also why you put it at the beginning, because then you've got 30, 45 minutes to work that stuff out. So that
they've thought it all.
Thinking.
I love it. Where has our conversation gone? We've talked tequila, we've talked vodka, we've talked beer. What's next?
Yeah, and we've learned things. We learned where Tito's is. We've learned Lynchburg. So tell me about your book.
Right. Do we have to? I'm just kidding.
Here's the question. Here's the question to get us started, though. You didn't start with the book. The book just came out, and you've been doing the Craigslist confessionals for 5 or 6 years now.
Yeah,
years. And this idea of you just listening to people's stories. So for everyone who does not know, you put out an ad on Craigslist to just listen. If someone had a story they wanted to tell, right, they could just tell you, and that was it. No judgment, no, I'm not trying to fix you or help you necessarily, just listening. So a question I have for you before we go further into the book is, did you consider yourself a listener before this? In your own personal life, are you one of those people that people talk to?
Yeah, I think I am. I think I've had this kind of come up a few times, and I think what I've learned from it is that there's a certain type of person that naturally attracts stories. You're just sitting on the train, minding your own business, and somebody just tells you their life story and well, there it is. Thank you for sharing that. And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who said that, she's that type of person. I'm like, I think I am too, because whatever it is about our maybe demeanor or just outlook on life, or what little people might sense or feel or know about us, makes it more possible, I guess, to just share things and go deeper than you would normally. And I think that's a privilege, and I'm glad, and whatever magic is there that makes that so, I'm happy to have it and provide it to others. But I'd never done anything anywhere close to this. I wasn't, a professional listener before, whatever that might be. It was just, Helena's the gal that people go to when they need to share. Yeah, Janet says her husband and son are like that. It's just when people need to share something, it's just, they come and they just say whatever they need to say, and it's go, bye-bye, see you later. And you're just what just happened? Why did this person just tell me everything? And that happened quite a bit to me. And then when I posted this ad, it was, the idea behind it, and I'll get into a little bit about how it started, the idea, and how it grew from there. I was working as a lawyer and lobbyist in DC, and there was a homeless man who panhandled right in front of my office building. His name was Joe. And Joe and I had kind of developed a relationship over the year that I'd been working there. I worked on Capitol Hill a lot, so I'd go to, as a lobbyist, I'd go to a lot of just box lunches on policy and things of that sort. And when they're having policy meetings or briefings, usually they'll provide free lunches. So I'd sneak a couple and bring them to Joe, and then, usually you get him some sort of drink or something, or a sandwich from around the corner. And we had, I'd say hi, but never really had sat down to have a full conversation with him. And then one day I didn't stop to talk to him, and it wasn't a deliberate thing on my end at all. It was just, I probably had a bad day or something and just wasn't thinking. And he called after me and he said, "Hey, are you upset with me?" And I think that was the moment that gave me a lot of pause, because it was sad and upsetting, and it made clear how much he was depending on what I was providing him. And it also made clear to me that I think I was probably doing to him what a lot of other people do when it comes to homelessness, which is to just kind of look away and ignore, because it's painful to come to terms with somebody who is homeless and how hard their life must be. And so I actually stopped that day and had a conversation with Joe. and we shared that sandwich that you mentioned earlier, and talked about a lot of details from his own life and some from my own. And I remember just feeling kind of surprised at what I was sharing and the things that were coming out of my mouth. Usually, we're so, I think, probably contained and almost rehearsed in what we allow ourselves to share with other people. And it was just such a moment of surprise for me, because suddenly I just, filter was gone, and I was telling him everything, and he was kind of sharing and reciprocating. And we had this very strange little moment between the two of us of like, wow, this conversation went really deep. And I became the person who was kind of, telling him everything. And it was really, I was very impressed by it. Not impressed in the traditional sense, but it just like left me feeling that something really important had happened. And I spent a few days trying to process why it was that I felt so free to share with him things that I wouldn't have shared with anybody else in my life at that point. And that's where the idea for Craigslist Confessional came from, is that I posted an ad on Craigslist, and I offered to listen anonymously and for free to stories that people didn't feel they could share with anybody else in their lives. And I wanted to be that anonymous listener, but really it also came from a place of me feeling very sad and unhappy in my job, and unhappy in the choices that I made in my life at that point, and feeling a bit trapped, and wanting to find a kindred spirit, wanted to find somebody else who felt the same way, who could share some of that and mirror it back to me, and hopefully that would make me feel a little bit less lonely in my own burdens. And it's what had happened with Joe. So I hoped to replicate that, to have it happen again and again, which is why, out of selfishness, I posted that initial ad, and I started meeting with people almost immediately after posting it. And I think it was almost immediate after that first meeting. I knew, okay, I don't know how, and I don't know what will come of this or what I'm going to do, but this is going to change my life. So I remember meeting with Sarah, whose story is in the book, and she'd been a heroin addict for the better part of 2 decades. She was a mom, and she told me about, her relationship with her kids and how her addiction had affected that, and her childhood and the trauma, and the abuse from that, and how it kind of tied in with her choices. And she was thankfully clean when I spoke to her, and had been sober for a while. But it was just really heavy to hear her story. And it was especially important because as we were walking back to the train station, she was able to kind of like almost take me back in time and point out like sections of the city that are now kind of downtown DC, very affluent and very nice areas of the city, where she used to score heroin all those years ago. So just like, actually, that was that corner, so she's like walking me through her history, and it just was so vivid and so impressive and important. And I remember walking her to the train station and going back to my office and shutting the door, and I just had this like, wow moment. I don't know how I'm going to keep doing this, but I need to keep doing this. And so I did. I kept answering the responses that I was getting to the ad and meeting with people. And initially it was all in person, so it felt a little bit risky because Craigslist isn't necessarily the safest place.
Right.
It doesn't have that reputation for being the safest place, so it was a little bit scary. But I made sure to do it like in very public places, so it was usually like a super central Starbucks, or at like times where it was, prime time. It wasn't like quiet or dimly lit or anything like that. So I'd scope the place out before and make sure that I felt safe, and then set the meetings there. And I just thinking back about the first few meetings and like the feeling, I was just so inspired by people's stories. And I hope that anybody who reads the book and reads what people have shared and the burdens that we're all carrying and how they might feel insurmountable, but all of these people have lived to tell their own stories. And so they're so inspiring just because of that. And just to see how far this project has come, I feel a lot of, I feel very, very lucky.
One of the things that I really enjoyed reading your book is each story is inspirational, and each story it's unique, and yet, we do all carry these certain similar things with us, but it's not, there's no spin on it. There's no, we talk about judgment, and sometimes, we don't want to judge people, but then also a lot of times when you see a news story or you see a documentary or something, there's a spin. We're trying to, you were down in the dumps and now you're not. Right. Or you're down in the dumps and they didn't make it out. Like, there's no, it does have a spin. And I did not find that with any of the stories in your book. They were told, I'm sure, very similar to the way they were told to you, and they're just a piece of someone's life.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that, because that's exactly what the intention was. I wanted to stay as faithful as possible to the story told to me. And I think that, just kind of a look behind the scenes, I think the initial trepidation and the initial kind of reservations that people might have had about publishing these stories is that it's too real and too much. And, my feeling on that is, this is real life. So real life is too real. It happens to everyone around us. It happens to us every day. And maybe not to this degree, but we all have these apex moments of feeling a lot and being overburdened and needing a place to go and emotionally let go of all of that. And sometimes we don't have a person that we can confide in. Actually, I would venture to say most times we don't have a person that we can confide in, at least not fully, not without feeling that something has been lost in this transaction of sharing your story and sharing your secret, right? So you lose face, or you lose something, you lose standing, you lose trust, you lose confidence, you lose a part of yourself. I think there's sharing something that is deep and dark and something that you have either shame in or regret about or have any sort of just kind of close guarded feeling about. It is a transactional thing with people that we know. And I think a lot of people don't want to go there. And a lot of people don't have access to therapy, either because of self-imposed reasons or societal reasons or financial reasons, which are significant. We're just not in a place where everybody who needs therapy can get to a place where they can say, totally, I'm going to go and I'm going to do that for myself. But when you see an ad on Craigslist and it's free and anonymous and there's really nothing to lose, those barriers don't really exist anymore. And so I think this is why you get this collection of people who are willing to share that deep part of themselves, because there is no fear that they're going to lose something in the process.
Exactly. And I think, too, the people that you consider your closest confidants are often involved to some degree in any of these issues. It affects them, whether it's specifically about them or they love me. So if I tell them, then that's going to affect them.
Right.
And that keeps us from talking to the people we do know. And then I think with therapists too, it's access for sure. But then another piece of it is, I feel like a therapist is going to try and fix me, and maybe I'm feeling okay. Maybe I don't feel like I need a fix.
Yes.
So why go waste their time and my money and everyone else's concern to do that?
There are expectations. I think in a nutshell, even with people that we know, friends, family, and therapists, there are expectations. With a therapist, the expectation is that you're going to work on this issue that you brought up, and you won't just come to the table and fetch about the same thing over and over and over again. So you feel like you have to edit what you say to show that you've made progress, or maybe you've looked at it in a different way. And because there is a long-standing relationship, hopefully, with this therapist, it does feel a little bit scarier to share something that really is, what's keeping you up at night, because you will see this person again next week. And I think one of the biggest fears that people face is that look of perhaps just flash of judgment across somebody's eyes or maybe just being taken aback or seeing something that you don't know how to interpret, and then having that feeling of, oh my gosh, well, maybe I shouldn't have said anything. So that lack of, imposed ongoing relationship is another factor in why I think people are much more willing to share things with strangers than they are willing to share with, people people that they know, and especially people that they know well, who, like you said, are invested in the outcome, invested in their lives, or invested in them getting better.
So Janet has a question. Do you keep in touch with any of your storytellers?
I do. Yes. I am in touch with a few people who have shared their stories. Henry is one of them. Edie is another one of them. I have a really interesting story about why this is such an important conversation with Raina for me, and why I'm so honored to be kind of featured at the Garden District Bookshops. And I wish I were there in person. Unfortunately, I can't be. But one of the people who has shared their stories with me, Henry, he shares a story about loss. So unfortunately, Henry's wife passed away from complications due to alcoholism. I met Henry when I was living in DC, and I met him in person at a Starbucks, and we spoke for a couple of hours that night, and then we kept in touch over email. So something that I say is I don't impose a relationship on people, meaning if somebody doesn't want to keep in touch with me, it is not a prerequisite to having a conversation. If somebody doesn't want to share their story publicly, so to have it be written about, it is not a prerequisite to a conversation. If they want to do it off the record, so to speak, that's fine as well. My priority is to be a listener. So when I met with Henry, he kind of opened that door of, hey, let's stay in touch. And I said, sure, I would love that. And he had my email and eventually my phone number. And over the years, we stayed in touch and became quite close. And I remember when I moved to New York from DC, when Alex and I got married, I ended up meeting with Henry at an ABP close to that original where my office had been, and he brought this shirt that he and his wife had bought after 9/11 that said, "I love New York." So he brought me a shirt that had been his wife's, and he said, "I would love for you to have this." And so I kept that shirt and brought it to New York with me. And I remember, New York is a very difficult city to live in. It's just so many people and crowded, and you can get really lost. And I didn't really know anybody here. And my husband was working in the ER here, so he was very overwhelmed and was seeing a lot of really difficult things every day. And I didn't really feel that I had any place to share my own, sadness and isolation and having moved to a new city. And my best friend was in DC, a few hundred miles away. And I remember talking to my best friend on the phone one day, and Henry had just moved to New Orleans, and I got this email from him, and he said, hey, I hope you're doing well, yada, yada, yada. And then he would sign off every email with, so when are y'all coming to New Orleans? And it was this invitation to me and Alex to go and visit him. And unfortunately, as I said, Alex was always working, so was unable to. But I was on the phone with my friend, and we were talking about how we hadn't seen each other in forever. And I get this email, and I'm like, oh, this is kissing. It's meant to be. So I said, do you want to come to New Orleans with me? And my friend had obviously never met Henry before, and I'd only met him a couple of times in person, but I obviously knew his story. And Henry's in his 70s. He's my dad's age, actually. I think he must be 74-ish now. And so we went to New Orleans to visit Henry, and we stayed with him for a week that first time that we went, and we had the best time. He was just such an amazing host and so kind, and he made his home so comfortable for us and had put so much thought into making us feel, at home and comfortable there. And we had such a good time, and the city was so amazing and breathtaking. And so my friend and I decided we're definitely going again. And of course, Henry also wanted us to come back. We were like, hey, we're coming. But we've been back every year since, and we have a yearly pilgrimage to New Orleans every Easter. And we have been 3 times now. We had tickets to come again this year, but obviously we had to cancel because of COVID. So I'm very sad that we weren't able to come, but we definitely are looking forward to, as soon as it is, easy and safe to do so, we're definitely coming back. Yeah, and he's met my son and has met Alex, and we're family. So I love that he introduced me to your city, and I love that we've become so close since. But it all started with a random meeting with a stranger on Craigslist.
That is amazing. I love that. I love that story. I love that you got to come here. So how many years have you been coming to New Orleans now?
I want to say 2017, 2018, 2019. So 3 years in a row. And then 2020 would have been our 4th year. Last year, my son was 8 months old. So we flew to New Orleans with Ronan, and there was a photo. We went to this restaurant, which is one of my favorite restaurants in New Orleans. It's Shaya.
Yes, Shaya.
And we went to Shaya, and there's a photo of so Ronan was sitting with my husband, Alex, next to Henry, and Alex was holding him in his arm and kind of feeding him. And at one point, kind of Ronan turns to him and looks at him, and there's a moment of pause where he's just kind of considering, like, and then he just reaches his arms out and goes and hugs him and like stays in Henry's arms for a little bit. And I just took as many photos as I could, but it was just such a sweet moment of everything coming full circle, of this like strange little circumstance leading us to this moment where, he meets the family, and it's so nice. He's such a special person, and I'm so happy that, I'm so happy I met him.
That is so sweet. I'm imagining it in my head, and it's an amazing story. It's adorable, and I can see it. I have never met either one of them. It's one of those ones, it's one of those little heartstring stories. It's a little baby.
Yeah.
It's like
it was such a cute moment, because Henry had been trying to give Ronan his space and not make him feel that he was, like, here, come to me, like most people are with babies. He was just, no, I want him to come to me. I want him to feel comfortable before I hold him. And so he'd been really respectful, but watching from afar. And he has a grandkid that's a little bit older than Ronan, but doesn't live in New Orleans. So I feel like he kind of maybe missed that a little bit. And he was wistful, kind of looking and trying to be respectful of the distance, but also really wanted to hold him, I could tell. And Ronan just turned around and kind of considered it for a second. He was like, yeah, okay, I guess, that's fine. And he just went over. And it was such a sweet moment. I mean, I love it. I think about that all the time. And we Zoom all the time and keep in touch and try to talk to him as much as I can. He sends me emails with like memes and stuff. So it's awesome.
That's great. Shaya, so the restaurant Shaya, the chef who helped open Shaya, his name is Alon
Shaya. Yeah, I know him well. I'm obsessed with his work, and his food is amazing. We went to Saba last time we were there as well. I actually wanted to get, as a Father's Day gift, they're working with this great organization that helps to give back to, I believe it's, I don't want to kind of, I want to check my work before I say so, but they're working in tandem with a great organization. They were going to donate a bunch of the proceeds from their sales of Father's Day meals. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to go online and buy Alex as a treat for Father's Day one of these meals. And I tried to go, but unfortunately, because it's from New Orleans, shipment was like twice the amount as the meal. And I was like, the cost was prohibitive. But I love nothing more than Alon Shaya's food. Actually, 1 second.
It's Son of a Saint, I think. Yeah. So
yes, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah, they're donating a portion of, yes, I was gonna say, if you have his cookbook.
I do. I love his cookbook, and I got Henry a copy of it, and my best friend has a copy of it. We're obsessed with it.
It's so good, and he is so sweet, Alon. And when he'll come in, whenever we get a new shipment, we like buy his book because we sell a bit of it. So we buy, a couple of boxes at a time, and then we'll give him a call, and he'll come by and sign all of our stock. So we usually do, hint, everyone, we usually have signed copies of Shaya's cookbook. But when
it's really good. You should really get yourself a copy because it is really approachable, very good meals, and I've made a bunch of them. So, and I'm not a good cook, so that's saying something.
I can second that. Well, not your cooking. I'm not judging your cooking. My cooking. My son is 13 now, and I have kept him alive. that well, so I can I can do that. But Shaya's cookbook is very approachable for sure. I definitely second that. If there's an ingredient I don't know what it is, I would just skip things I don't understand. But he will explain why you need it, why you need to do the thing that you need to do. You know, it's telling you, because I don't have like a chemistry mind. So I'm just like, I'm going to throw this in and throw that in. I don't really understand. I cook it for a little while. It says 10 minutes, but 8's fine. It's not always fine.
Yeah.
And I find that the things that are really important are explained in those recipes. So
I'm a forever fan. I love New Orleans restaurants in general, but I think definitely at Saba, I had one of the better meals I've ever had. So I love it. And he, I think, came to New York once. He did like a little tasting meal down in the seaport, and we went there with my husband and a few of our friends. Just schlepped, and they were like, "Trust me, you will love this," and they did. It was such a great experience. So yeah, and all of this from Henry and that initial trip to New Orleans. I'm now totally just in love with your city and the cuisine and the people I've met there, and it's just been such a special experience.
And it's great too, because you've had a local, or at least you said he moved here, so at least somebody who is living here for a while.
So actually, he was born and raised in New Orleans, went to school there, and then he moved to DC for work and stayed there for 20 some years, and then moved back. So he knows a lot of the history of the city, knows the geography really well, but doesn't really know the restaurants, the cuisine, the scene as much, because he'd only been there for a few short months before we went to visit him. So it was really great because we all had the chance to just do our research and look at whatever was, opening or new, or just businesses that we wanted to support, or places that everybody said, you absolutely must go here because it's amazing. And so I had a running list of places that I wanted to try, and we went every single day. I mean, Henry's unstoppable. He has the energy of like a 20-year-old. Just every single day we went to a new place, tried new coffee shops, went to Yellow Truck, I believe, and tried French truck.
It's yellow. The truck is yellow.
Yellow, yes.
Yes.
You understand my mistake. Yes, French truck, and I just bought the local coffee there, and it was just, I mean, I'm so influenced by everything, and then I absolutely loved it, loved being there, and I look forward to it every single year, and I'm so sad that this year is canceled.
Yeah, I had, like, I think the 3 little trips that I've canceled so far, and there's another one I was planning to take in the fall that is also, off the books at this point too. But just take a deep breath, right? It's for the greater good, and I'm totally cool with that. And as soon as we get through this, I've got like 8 trips that 8 little mini trips. I'm definitely.
Absolutely. I just can't wait for it to be safe again to travel. And I said my husband works in the ER, so in New York, it's thankfully been kind of very quiet on the COVID front, and we're not seeing those numbers jump back up, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we could keep it that way. But
how are you guys doing? Like, I know for a while everything was locked down there in New York, but what state are you at now? Like, are restaurants open or?
Yes. So restaurants are open, outdoor dining. People are still doing a really good job of wearing masks and socially distancing. We are, I believe, fully open, but I'm not treating it as such. I'm still kind of not really going out to eat and being very, very reserved, because I think that, with Alex being an ER doctor, we just have seen a lot of what can go wrong. And so we just want to be very, very careful and conservative about going out and re-engaging, and we want to be safe. And so I haven't really even seen my parents. They're elderly, and they're very at risk. And even though Alex can get tested because of his job, we always make sure to, and we don't want to avail ourselves too liberally to that, because tests are still very limited. And so I haven't seen them because I want to keep them safe, and we're just being very, very, very cautious about, whom we're seeing, and making sure that it's that it's okay, so that we don't see those numbers spike again, because that would be really, really scary.
Absolutely. That's kind of where we are now too. Restaurants are, I want to say 25% capacity, and then outdoor dining, and no bars are open, no bar service either. Even if it's a restaurant that has a bar, you can't sit at the bar, things like that. Most retail is open at limited capacity. And then we have masks are mandatory in the city.
How are you doing with your numbers? I know that New Orleans was like an epicenter, but this was 3 or 4 months ago. Has that changed? Is it better now?
So it is. Our numbers, we got our numbers down pretty good. I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but we got our numbers down pretty good before we reopened, because we were in total lockdown as well at the beginning. They locked down, and pretty much nothing besides grocery stores, things like that were open. And then when we opened back up, you'd see those numbers kind of go back up a little bit. And from what I personally have been looking at, and I obviously am not an expert on that, I've seen that plateau. We actually have a texting service you can sign up for that it will text you every day when the city reports to the Louisiana Health Department. They'll text us how many new cases, how many deaths due to COVID. And so it's like a reminder every day. I get this thing, and I can go back through that one line of text, and I can actually see what it looks like. And anecdotally, I've noticed that those numbers we've been plateauing at still a safe number, which is just, it'll be interesting. There's been a lot of changes in the last couple of weeks, because our universities, so Tulane and Loyola, they are having in-person classes. So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So in the last week and a half or so, we've had a big influx of college students coming to town, and I'm really interested to see what happens to that number in another week or so, as we go out, because that's a change. We were sitting at this, the things have been open that were open for some time, for a couple of months, and now we've had this major change with all these people coming in, and I'm interested to see what happens from that. But right now we are doing okay. Yeah. No, that's cautious. Everything I say is cautious.
Yeah. I mean, we must be still, because we don't know what's going to happen. If there'll be another spike in the fall, hopefully there won't be, but it's definitely caution is the way forward. So I'm glad that the numbers are looking a little bit better, but I'm cautiously optimistic and hoping that it stays the same, but who knows really.
Exactly. So there is something that I want to bring up, and I know we're not going to show this cover, the ARC, the Advanced Reader's Copy. I'm going to briefly show the camera what the Advanced Reader's Copy of Craigslist Confessional looks like. So Advanced Reader's Copies, for anybody who doesn't know, those are ones that the publishers send out. They're almost finished. They're not completely finished. Sometimes you'll see a typo here and there. The print, the paper quality might not be the same as it would be when it hits the shelves for customers to purchase. But they send them out to reviewers and bookstores so that we can read them ahead of time. So when the book comes out, we already know what it's about and what how to sell it to you. But this, quickly, is what Craigslist Confessional looks like. I got a copy. The Advanced Reader's Copy of it. That is what the cover looked like. And now Helena is going to show you what the actual that is the cover that if you go into Garden District right now and you buy it, that is the cover you will see.
Here it is.
So as an example, how things can change between, in the few months, really, between when I got this and that hit the shelf, what is the process from the behind the scenes to that? So I gathered, were not a fan of the cover that I got.
Yeah, I think that my reservation with the cover that you have is that it kind of struck me as a little bit Gabby, as like a casual, cute, oh, here's some secrets from Craigslist type of book. I got a little here's gossip, right? Is what that communicated to me. And as everybody who's been listening in kind of has probably gathered at this point, these are not lighthearted, happy, cute, sexy stories from Craigslist. Yeah, they're serious issues, and they deal with, things that range from addiction, mental illness, alcoholism, etc., to loss, to identity, to all the categories of love that are included in the book. And so I didn't want the cover to impart this sense of this is going to be a lighthearted book, because it's really not. And I think that's probably, yeah, exactly, Janet. It looks casual and lighthearted and like it's going to be a gossipy book. And I thought that, anybody who saw that cover and then read those stories would probably have felt a little bit betrayed and getting that false information from the cover. And so I tried to communicate that, but we had been several rounds of back and forth over, what the cover was meant to be. And at one point it was just like, we've done this so much and we can't seem to really make each other happy. So we're going to have to go forward because we need the arcs and, we need to move forward with the design. And so that's what they sent out. And then one day I remember getting this email and my editor was like, listen, we decided to redesign the cover, and she sent me the two options. And one of them was this great blue cover with kind of a space silhouette on it. And the other was this one. And I saw this one. I was like, this is it. Send it. This is it. This is the cover. I just immediately fell in love with it because I think it just perfectly communicates. And I don't know if you can really see this, but there's abuse, and the parts that are kind of covered in red here have words like trauma, secret, scandal, sex, obligation, love, hope, which are some of the themes that are included in these stories. And so this is, I thought, was just very representative of the stories that were within, and I loved it immediately. So I'm very glad that we got here, but that ARC cover was just, I was so afraid of what might happen when they see this cover and then they read the stories and it's like, oh no.
Well, and I'm funny is that from a bookseller point of view too, like the one, this on the shelf, it comes in and you look at it and you go, oh, this is not for me. Or it is. I mean, it's attracting, that cover attracts a different personality of reader for what the content is.
Yeah.
And then the cover that you have that we ended up with, I mean, if that was on the ARC, that's a very different. So even from that point of view, you're trying to get the right bookseller or the right reviewer to read that is going to appreciate it.
Yeah.
That's not representative either.
Yeah. And I think Janet made a really good point, which is that never mind the reader and never mind my personal feelings, but that cover and then the stories and honoring the stories that people had shared. It was, you're right, a disservice to the gravitas and to the importance of what was being shared. I felt it just was incongruent. And I'm so happy that we ended up with this cover because I think it honors the stories within and just the whole experience far more than the original one did. But that said, oof, what a process. I never thought that something, I think initially they were, I mean, again, very nice and accepting. And we went back and forth for a while. And my editor was like, what do you imagine? And it's like, oh, I really like the color green. I was just I had no idea, I was like, well, you guys know, you take it over, but I really like green. And she's like, okay. And then I get the covers. I'm like, now I have an opinion. Suddenly she's like, well, where was this when I asked you, So it's just, you don't really know until you go through it, what the process is like. And it's a lot of things that you find out that you never even thought you'd have to deal with when it comes to publishing a book. And certainly I was unprepared for because I don't have a background in this and I never set out to write a book. It was something that, developed from the experience a few months in where I just decided, wow, these stories are super powerful. And I think that I was hearing a lot of this need for utility of the people that had gone through these things to share with others and to help somebody who might be going through something similar. And that's when the idea of, okay, these stories, we can share them. We can create this community of people who are bonded through these stories. And, and then it was just like 101 teaching myself how to go through all of this. There's a lot of trial and error, and the cover was definitely one of those parts of trial and error that was a little bit more challenging than I ever would have thought would have been, but what can you do?
So what are you doing with Craigslist Confessionals now? Now you've got the book, and we're still promoting the book, but what's the next step, I guess, for you and for Craigslist Confessionals?
You know, I feel like this is not something that you do and then just turn around and, say, okay, I'll never do anything similar ever again. It's just one of those experiences. And it's been 6 years of this now as a listener, of being privy to stories that people don't really share about themselves, and kind of pushing that curtain aside and looking into the private lives of people just like you and I, people not very different, not exceptional, everyman stories of, trials and traumas and sadness and loss. And so you can't really see all of that and walk away. And I don't really know what's next, but I know I'm still listening. So I get messages and people who want to share their stories, and I 100% still do that, and it's an active, and it's not for the purpose of writing, obviously, a second book or anything of that sort, but just because I'm committed to that process of being a listener myself. It's changed my life, and I hope that impacts other people positively as well, the people who share their stories positively as well. So I'm going to keep doing this for as long as I live, but in terms of next steps, I just find the stories that we all have to share, not Hollywood, not glamorized, but just the raw, kind of unfiltered stories that we all have to share about our own lives. I mean, that's gold. So I think I want to keep doing that. I want to just lean into that and see where it takes me.
Absolutely. I love it.
How do I say interpret? or Raina?
Interpret?
Interpret. Am I saying it differently than you are?
I don't think so. Interpret.
I probably have a bit of an accent. I don't really get told that very often anymore, but I remember up until maybe a few years back, people would say, oh yeah, I can definitely sense that there's a bit of an accent there, and I can't hear it anymore, but maybe I say it differently.
I don't know, but now you're going to have to go say it to like 2 or 3 different people and ask them. You're having fun with it, so that's good. Well, I just wanted to thank you for coming on to Virtual Happy Hour with me, talking to me about your book and about all the things.
Thank you so much for having me on. This has been so much fun, and we've really covered so much ground here.
I feel like we have. I think we've run the gamut from book covers to beer.
We must do this again. Book or no, and I'm going to come visit you, and I will. And I hope you remember this face. You see it at your door soon.
I cannot wait. I love doing virtual happy hours because I really do feel like you get to know each other a little bit better than when we have a formal book conversation. Very like, here are the prearranged questions, and can you just do that? Can you do that with your hair? Okay, good, thank you. No, let's not do that. That's not fun. We need something where we get to promote a book, we get to talk to each other, and we still get to kind of relax. We don't need any more formal crap that we have to worry about. Just
life is hard enough and formal enough as it is. Every chance you get to just be yourself and share your story and talk freely about whatever it is that's on your mind is a chance you absolutely take. And I believe in that fully. Not just as a listener, but just as a way of being. I think it's just, how else to connect with people and with like-minded and like-hearted people than just kind of be yourself and talk about what's important to you. So thank you so much for having me on. I hope you guys will read this book. These stories are important. Not because I wrote them. Ignore that I wrote them. These stories are important. So get your hands on a copy of it somehow. I hope you will. And let's honor the stories that people have shared.
And we absolutely have it at the bookstore, and we will continue to carry it at the bookstore. And next time you're in town, you'll have to come visit us, and maybe we can get together and do something for the paperback release, and we'll get you to actually sign some copies for us.
I would love that. I really would.
There you go. All right. Thank you very much, Helena.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and commenting. And we'll see you next time.
See ya.